Mike Harmless. I'm the chair of Midwestern Outreach for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So I get to travel with Donald Davidson all over the Midwest. It's always a joy. Donald came to the Speedway in 1964 from his native England. He is the co-author of the Autocourse Official History of the Indianapolis 500. He's also been profiled on ABC World News Tonight. He was live and as a guest of Ted Koppel on ABC's Nightline, along with Jackie Stewart and Mario Andretti. He was inducted into the Auto Racing Hall of Fame in 2010, and the Indianapolis Star proclaimed Davidson as one of the 100 most influential people in the history of the Indianapolis 500. Without further ado, the historian of the Motor Speedway, Donald Davidson.
That's good. Super.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having us over here. I've got to try and cram a number of things into a short period of time, and this is a very special visit for me. Well, first of all, the reason that we're here is I assume that there are those of you that go or have gone to the Indianapolis 500. I know Bob Lash went first time in 1960, so hands up please if you have ever been to the Indianapolis 500. Oh, okay, very good. This is going to work out well. We're out sort of visiting the communities with a kind of a different twist this year, but the point is that we're coming up on the Indianapolis 500 again. It will be the 103rd running of the Indianapolis 500. The Speedway was built in 1909. The first 500 was held in 1911. A lot of people think that it opened with the 500. It did not. That was in the third season. And it's been held every year since, with the exception of 1917 and 18 when they shut down for World War I, and then 42 through 45, because of World War II. But we believe that while there were events that started earlier, the French Grand Prix was first held in 1906, but there's many years when it hasn't been held, including right now. There's no French Grand Prix at the moment, and maybe somebody that's familiar with international motor racing can explain that one to me. But anyway, we believe that there's no other automobile race in the world that has been held as many times as the Indianapolis 500. Something new this year, not if you go, but if you don't go, is that if you watch it on television, you'll have to switch to a different channel, because it's been on ABC actually since 1965, when it used to be part of Wide World of Sports the following week, and then in 1971 it went to tape delayed prime time the night of the race, and that was all the way from 71 until 1985. And then in 1986, finally, after much deliberation, they went live on ABC. And what happened the first day? It rained out. And they postponed it to the following day, and it got rained out again. And finally held a week later, and there's a bit of a local tie-in there. I go all over the place. I hope you can keep up with me. I keep going off on tangents, and hopefully we find our way back. But anyway, so this year, for the first time since 1965, it is has left ABC, and it will be on NBC. And so that's another reason that we're over here. The lady who's the sports director with the local affiliate is apparently going to be here to do an interview when we're done, and then we're going to go to the station and do some promos and so on and so forth. But anyway, the 103rd running of the Indianapolis 500 is coming up. I was going to talk a little bit about the local tie-ins with Columbus, Ohio, because there's quite a number of 500 connections here going way back. And but I haven't quite decided how I'm going to do this, because we have some stuff to give away, which we're not exactly going to give away. You're going to have to earn it. We did bring some tickets. We got a couple of sets of Indianapolis 500 qualification tickets, and then also a couple of sets for the what they call the Indy Grand Prix, which is that opens the what used to be a full month of May on the road course. Those are general admission race tickets. Now, there's no, you won't be able to get into a grandstand unless you upgrade yourself a little bit. Well, it'll get you on the grounds, and you can roam around and sit on the mounds, and there's family areas and so forth. And we're going to do that in a few moments. But I say we're not going to give them away. You're going to have to earn them. I've got a few trivia questions. And so how I think we're going to conduct this is I will pose the question, and I'm going to ask you to please not call out the answer, but if you think you know it, if you would raise your hand, and then Mayor Harmless, the former Mayor of Greencastle, who is my chauffeur, valet, and books all these events, he will select somebody, and then we'll give you the chance to answer. And if you don't get the answer correctly, then we'll go, for a reasonable amount of time until we get a winner. And but let me just keep myself honest here. A number of the local tie-ins, I've got a very a close connection with Columbus, Ohio. I'm actually British born, although I don't know if you can hear that anymore. It's not like when I first arrived. I've lived in in Indiana, in or around the town of Speedway. And I know when you say I live in Speedway, Indiana, people think, oh, do they have tents on the infield? No, there's actually a community, the town of Speedway, and that's where we live. But when I had emigrated from England because of my interest in racing, very early, I didn't drive yet. And so I had friends would take me on racing trips. And on April the 23rd of 1966, when I was very, very young, we went from Indianapolis to a race in Trenton, New Jersey. And in those days, there wasn't much freeway. In fact, if you were coming from Indianapolis, you would drive on Highway 40 through all these little tiny villages until you got to Richmond. And then some of you, I don't know how many of you go back this far, and then at Richmond you went up, and then there was a stretch of 70 that went for about 25, 30 miles to Dayton, and then you went back down to 40 and then drove in the scenic route the rest of the way. And so leaving my place of employment, the United States Auto Club, on a Friday evening, obviously it was too much of a haul to go all the way through to the East Coast. So whenever we did that, our stopping point for the evening was Columbus, Ohio. Well, we were young and single. There were 3 of us. And so when we arrived in Columbus, then we sort of drove around to see what we could find before we settled down for the night. And we picked up 3 chicks in Bexley, and it ended up that I married one of them. She lived in Indianapolis, and she recently passed away, but we were married for 51 years, and so you never know. Once in a while, it works out. I'm not kidding you. We saw these chicks and said, let's ask them if they needed a ride, and they said, yes, so it works out. Anyway, we were over here a lot. We have 4 kids. My youngest daughter's here, but we would come to Columbus, oh golly, at least once a month, several times during the summer. We'd pick the kids up from school at 3 o'clock and then drive them straight over here, and then we'd spend the weekend with the in-laws and so forth. And then another little, personal note. I don't know if I'm using up too much time to tell personal stories here, but the fairgrounds, on Labor Day, they used to run a 100-lap USAC, United States Auto Club, midget race. Now, the real race fans, the heavy-duty race fans, would be down in DuQuoin, Illinois, for a championship race, which was held on Labor Day, Monday. But this 100-lap midget race was at the fairgrounds, And so the people that didn't have a ride for DuQuoin would be here. It was a free fare. I don't know if they still do that or not. But they started hot laps at 10 o'clock in the morning, and they disqualified, started 24 cars in a 100 lap feature on the half mile, and they had to be done by 1 p.m. because the live show was coming in. And so I was hired as the public address announcer. And although I had done a little bit of radio and continued to do, and I'll go off on a tangent here, it's with a little bit of effort that I promote an NBC television broadcast, because I'm on the radio network, and I hope people will still listen to the radio. So anyway, I got this job to do public address. And the first, I ended up calling a number of races, but the first one I ever did was at the fairgrounds, Labor Day, 1966. And as I say, we had to be out of there by 1 because the live show was coming in, and it was Herman's Hermits. I wonder if anybody here today was at that show. All right, a hand in the back, very good. I did that, I did it in 66, 67, and then 70. But anyway, forgive me for that little foray back into an area where I don't normally go. Anyway, as far as the local connections, let's see if we can start with the trivia here. And I've got a few here that some of them are a little heavy duty, but so I'll start off with this one. Now please, I'm going to pose the question and then ask you, if you think you know the answer, raise your hand please, and then Mayor Harmless will pick somebody. There was a driver in the very early days, before World War I, a driver from Columbus, Ohio, drove in the race several times and became internationally renowned for other things, but he was a driver. So, Mayor Harmless, there's a few hands, pick somebody. Who was that?
Right here.
All right. Yes, sir.
Eddie Rickenbacker.
Eddie Rickenbacker is the correct answer. And I was going to say, so that's before Eddie Rickenbacker learned how to fly a plane. He was a driver in the Indianapolis 500. A lot of people don't know that. And his mentor was Lee Frayer, who had a garage here. And also there was an automobile company called, they built Firestone Columbus was the name of the car. And it was made by the Columbus Buggy Company, because a number of the early automobile companies they were already in business doing something else, and hadn't changed the name yet to reflect what they did. All right, that's one. Let's see here. I'm trying to figure out, I could get about 3 questions out of this 1 point here. When I mentioned in 1986 that the first day was rained out, so the first time they ever were live with ABC, it rained out. And then I'm also told that's the largest viewing audience they've ever had to date, was a rain out. Anyway, so it was postponed to the next day, rained out again on Monday, and then it went to the following Saturday, which is the first time they had done that much of a leap, and it still came within May. So, hands in the air, in 1986, name the driver who won the Indianapolis 500.
Bobby Rahal.
Bobby Rahal is the correct answer. All right. Oh, and you'll have your choice of 500 qualification tickets from May 18th or 19th, or for the Grand Prix, the IndyCar race, and I don't recall the date on that, but it's on the ticket. Anyway, you make a choice. All right, out of that, hands in the air, please. And if you've already won, I wouldn't say we'll disqualify you, but we'd like to have somebody else. What was the name of the owner of the team? Oh, hands up in the air again, for which Rahal drove. There's a gentleman in the corner, I think, was the winner.
Right here was first.
I'm sorry?
Right here was first.
Oh, all right then.
Jim Truman.
Jim Truman is the correct answer. All right, heavier duty. Okay? Now this one's getting a little more serious. Bobby Rahal has a son, Graham Rahal, who has driven in the 500 several times. And Graham is named for Graham Hill, two-time Formula One world champion. That doesn't really matter. He's married to a daughter of John Force, the drag racer. So his dad is Bobby Rahal, and he's named for Graham Hill. And his his father-in-law is John Force. Now, hands in the air, please. Can you name Graham Rahal's godfather? It is a local connection, and I was amazed when I found this out. Yes, sir.
Well, I've already answered on Jack Hanna.
It is Jack Hanna. That is the correct answer. And how that comes about, I have no idea. I can only assume it must be golf. Bobby Rahal did confirm that Graham was named for Graham Hill, but I never asked him, how on earth did you get together with Jack Hanna? But that is the correct answer. All right, this one's a little easier now. What have we got, Mayor? One more set?
Yep.
All right. Hands in the air, please. I love trivia. There have been 771 different drivers driving the Indianapolis 500 in 102 running so far. 771. Raise your hand, please, if you can tell me how many drivers in the 500 ever with the surname Smith.
Way over here.
Yes.
0.
0 is the correct answer. So you probably figured that one out with logic, and also because of the lights, I'm not sure if we're being recorded here, but that's backfired on me a couple of times because I go to an event, we do the trivia questions, and then when I go to another event, and somebody's able to get the answers because they saw it on a social media from an earlier event. The other one that I had on deck, which I won't get to now, but I'll give it to you anyway because I just love trivia and how the really quirky answers. There is one female, no prizes for this. This year, it looks like there will be one female in the Indianapolis 500. Does anybody tell me what her surname is? No takers? Yes.
Man.
Correct. It's Pippa Mann. And I love that. What's the surname of the only female this year? Mann. No Smiths. I mean, can you make this stuff up? All right. Let me quickly run through here and then tell you some of the other connections. There are 2 Indianapolis 500 winners who were born in Columbus, Ohio. One of them was a 3-time winner. I was deliberating about whether I should do some of these for prizes, but anyway, Maury Rose, who was the co-winner in 1941, took over another car and drove it to victory, and then won it in 47 and 48, was born in Columbus, Ohio. Sam Hanks, the winner in 1957, by which time he was living in Pacific Palisades, California, overlooking the ocean, was born in Columbus, Ohio, and came back to the area during the war. Well, I don't know if you would consider it the area or not, but he was in the Army Air Corps as a troubleshooter during the war, and he was stationed down in Dayton at what became Wright-Patterson, except it wasn't Wright-Patterson yet. A great stock car driver and motorcycle racer by the name of Paul Goldsmith. Bob Lash is still here. Great battle for victory between Jim Rathman and Roger Ward, who finished first and second. Third was Paul Goldsmith. And I did not know until recently that he actually went to school in Columbus, Ohio. He was born in West Virginia, lived most of his life in Michigan. but actually went to grade school here in Columbus. And then there was a gentleman named Speed Gardner, W.H. Speed Gardner, that raced in the 1920s, that was an East Coaster, but he lived the final years of his life on the east side here. And then there was an up-and-coming driver by the name of Bobby Marvin, that I don't know if I'm seeing any nodding heads or not, but he was local and actually was entered for the Indianapolis 500 in 1963, but was fatally injured before he had the opportunity to drive. Then there was Chuck Engel from Reynoldsburg, made a shot there in 1963. And then the Columbus Motor Speedway and the Knuckles family. I knew the Knuckles kids when they were 8, 9, 10 years old driving quarter midgets, and they made quite a go of the Columbus Motor Speedway. And then up north of here, there was a track called Powell Speedway, and I think it was actually, was it Powell, Ohio is why it got the name, I think. Long gone now, except you can drive by and see where it was. And that was kind of a going place for a few years right after the war. And a driver named George Robson won the 1946 Indianapolis 500. And shortly before Labor Day, he won a feature up at Powell Speedway. Anyway, there's more, and I'm probably running this into the ground. But normally we do a little bit of Q&A, and we've got about 5 minutes here before the bell clangs, and I know that you're pretty regimented at these meetings, so I'll just hurry the thing along. And I'll preface my remarks, and this will take 2 minutes. I don't like controversy. I try to steer away from controversy. I have to be very careful about opinions because I work for the track, and I tell people sometimes the opinions expressed here are not necessarily those of the management, so I've got to be careful with that, especially when it's being recorded. And then I'm not a gearhead, I'm not a techie, and so I just sort of like nice, easy questions about the drivers and non-controversial, please. So yes, sir, did you have a question?
What was the most bizarre thing you've ever seen happen at the 500?
The most bizarre thing I've ever seen happen? Wow, I'd have to think about that. It may not necessarily have been on the track. You mean during the running of the race or behind the scenes? Boy, I'm sorry, I'd have to think about that one. So I may give you an answer before we're done here, but no, you threw me your curve on that one. All right, someone, yes, yell it out.
Just a piece of information and then a question.
Okay.
Piece of information is where Eddie Rickenbacker lived on Livingston Avenue. The house is still there.
Yes.
But right behind it was Driving Park. It's now a neighborhood, but that was a racetrack over around Fairwood and Livingston. Big oval track for motorcycles, and they did the airplanes and the race cars. We're talking 1905, 1910.
I knew about the driving park. I didn't know that it was right there. And I years ago, I went down there a few times to see Rickenbacker's original house.
So the house is still there. So the question is, the desire to win the 500 is so immense. I wanted you to maybe paint a little picture of the Bettenhausen family and their desire to win the race.
Wow, okay, I wasn't expecting that one. The Bettenhausens were from Tinley Park. The father was Melvin Eugene Bettenhausen. His name wasn't Anthony or Tony. In fact, that was a nickname that was derived from the fact that when he was a little boy, he used to get into fights with the neighborhood kids, and they called him Tunney, after Gene Tunney, the world heavyweight champion. And Tunney got changed into Tony. Anyway, Tony Bettenhausen was a farmer from Tinley Park, Illinois, south side Chicago. And he drove in the race 14 times. Second in 1955 was the best finish. His forte was dirt tracks. He won the national championship in 1951 and 1958. In 51 with 8 wins, which was a record. And in 58 with no wins. It was done on consistency. And unfortunately, he lost his life at the Indianapolis Speedway in a practice run the day before the first qualifying day in 1961. but he had 3 sons, all of whom drove at the track. The oldest brother was Gary, and I think he had 21 starts total. I'd have to count them up on my fingers. Third in 1980 was his best finish. Led a lot of the race, driving for Roger Penske in 72, broke down leading. And then the middle brother was Merle Bettenhausen, who ended up not ever driving in the race, although he was there trying. And then the youngest was Tony Lee Bettenhausen, and his best finish was 7th as a rookie in 1981, finished 7th. And but as far as the desire, I know that the Bettenhausens, they lost the dad. Gary had a very serious injury that rendered one of his arms not as useful as it had been, but he was able to counteract that by sheer hard-headed Dutchman mentality that came from the dad. And then Tony, the kid, actually was lost in an airplane accident, so I'm afraid that's not a very happy thing. But the Bettenhausens just loved the Speedway, and I know it's kind of a thorn in their side that the Unser family had so much success with a total of 9 wins between a total of 6 drivers, but the 3 of them won, and the Bettenhausens never got a 500 victory. So I hate to wind up on that one, except that I can see somebody that's going to come up here and clang the bell in my ear. And so let me just say that when we're done here, I'm here for a while. So if you want to come and do a one-on-one with me, after we're done, I'll be down here in the front somewhere. But come to the Indianapolis 500. If you don't, watch it on NBC, or at the very least, listen to it on the radio, because we're still doing radio. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Donald, I so much wanted to answer your first trivia question because I remember fondly as a youth reading about Captain Eddie Rickenbacker, the ace of World War I and race car driver at the Indy 500. But sitting next to President-elect John O'Meara, I learned one more piece of trivia for your next talk.
Okay.
So he's from Columbus, so you'd think he might be interned here in Columbus, right? John Muir actually knows exactly where he's interned. John, where's Captain Eddie Rickenbacker?
The one before Medal of Honor winners were buried at Green Lawn Cemetery.
And John is on the board of Green Lawn Cemetery, so he had a little inside information. But if you want to know more from John about that, and we just thank you for coming today. I hope the trivia questions made it most interesting. Thank you for joining.